you know that this item lets you level up rapidly? And this one is a must-have for PvP. These are 23 secret items in the first sea that you miss. And starting off, we got something pretty basic. And you can find this on the very first island of the game. These items are the katana and the cutlass. They're very basic swords, and I would be extremely surprised if you guys missed these. Both of these swords cost a total of 1,000 belly each, and the abilities of these swords are the exact same. The first ability that you get is called Quiet Rush, where you just dash forward with your sword and deal damage to whatever is in your way. Then we got the X ability, which is called Air Slash, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It shoots off one air slash, and this has a 20 mastery requirement. Overall, these weapons are pretty basic, but you probably want to buy a new weapon because these do have pretty low damage. The next item that I think more people have missed is the slingshot, because the island that you get it on is actually an island most people don't have to visit in the first sea until they're completed with it, and that is Middletown. You might have gone there to fight the saw boss, but you might have still missed the NPC that sells you this gun. You can find this NPC located next to this stall right here, and if you talk to him, he's going to sell you a total of 3 guns, and one of those guns is the slingshot, which you can buy for a total of 5,000 belly. And a lot of you might think guns are pretty useless, which they kind of are, but I recommend you guys to get this gun because you can use it to aggro enemies. And what I mean by that is in Blox Fruits, when you're trying to get an enemy to follow you, you actually have to hit them once. And it doesn't matter how much damage you do, as long as you even deal 1 damage, they'll start following you. And that should be the main use for this gun. The next item that you might have missed is the dual katana, and the NPC for this weapon can be found at the pirate village. The dual katana is overall a pretty solid sword, and it's definitely a step up from the katana and the cutlass. And make sure you don't confuse this for the cursed dual katana, because that is a completely different level of weapon. Anyways, let's talk more about the dual katana. This weapon costs a total of 12,000 belly, and you can buy it from the NPC named Sword Dealer of the West, who's located right here in the pirate village. The first ability of the katana is called Whirlwind, where you just shoot a long range attack and it kind of just spins around and constantly deals damage to your enemy until they go flying. Then we got the X ability, which is called Tornado, and this one has a 30 master requirement. And for this one, you kind of just spin around in a circle, creating a small tornado around you, and it deals a decent amount of damage. And if you want to upgrade the sword to grade 2, it costs a total of 12 angel wings and 10 leather, and increases the sword's damage by a whopping 30%. Overall, this sword is good for beginners. It has low cooldowns, low price, and low mastery requirements, but I recommend switching to another weapon when you get to a higher level. But the dual katana is not the only weapon that you can buy from this NPC. He also sells you another sword called the Iron Mace, which isn't really a sword, it's a mace. But this one costs a lot more. It literally costs 25,000 belly to buy. And the first ability of it is called Mace Smash, where you just deal damage to everything standing in front of you. Then we got the X ability, which is called Killer Combo, and this has a 30 mastery requirement. For this one, you spin around and finally smash the mace onto the floor. Overall, this is a pretty good sword for beginners, and it even does area damage, so you can hit multiple targets at the same time, even with your M1 attack. And it also has low mastery requirements, but it does have less damage compared to most other swords in the game. Anyways, moving on, there is another NPC that's located on the pirate village, and a lot of you definitely missed this guy. It's the Dark Step teacher, and he obviously sells you the Dark Step fighting style. This is the very first fighting style that you will have access to in the game. And it's also the cheapest fighting style that you can buy. So if you're low level and you're looking for a fighting style to get easily, then this is definitely the one that you should go for. He's located right here between these 2 buildings, and a lot of you might have missed this because he isn't really visible from the outside. You kind of have to walk through this wall to get there. Anyways, let's talk a bit about this Dark Step fighting style. The Dark Step fighting style is a pretty unique ability because you actually use your legs to fight instead of your hands, which is pretty unique. Anyways, let's get into the abilities themselves. The very first ability is called Flying Kick, where you just kind of jump and just slam into the floor. Then we got the X ability, which is called Breakdance, where you just spin around in a circle, dealing damage to everything around. Then we got the C ability, which is called Barrage, where you lock your enemy in place and start pummeling them with a butt ton of kicks. Then we got the V ability called Overheat, which is actually a transformation ability, which makes it so that your moves deal a lot more damage. It also sets your legs on fire, which you can see on the other abilities when you use them after using your transformation, which is honestly really cool. You can also upgrade this fighting style to Death Step later in the second C, so I definitely recommend getting your hands on this if you want Death Step, that is. The next item that you definitely missed is the Swordsman Hat. You can find this on the desert island, and the reason you missed this is because there's some specific stuff you need to do. First of all, you need to collect the chest that lies right here, and you're gonna notice there's a little hole underneath the chest, and you have to go into the hole and follow the tunnel until it ends, and there you're gonna find this NPC, and you can buy the hat for a total of 150,000 belly, and what it does is increase your sword damage by 10%, so it's pretty good for beginners with a sword build. But you do need to fulfill some requirements. First of all, you need to have 300 sword stat points, you need to have the flash step ability, the air jump ability, and the hockey ability. And if you don't know what those are, I'm gonna tell you about them right now. There's an NPC in the game called the Ability Teacher, and that's where you can buy all 3 of these abilities from. He's located at the snow village inside this cave. The first ability he sells you is called Air Jump, and you can buy it for a total of 10,000 belly. This is a pretty basic ability. It just lets you jump mid-air. So instead of having 2 double jumps, you have 10 double jumps, which is honestly really useful. Then we got the hockey ability, also known as Aura, which you can activate by using Jade. This one costs a total of 25,000 belly, and it basically makes it so that you can do extra damage and have more defense. And it also gives you the ability to hit people with elemental fruits, even if you're a lower level than them. And unlike the other 2 abilities you can buy from this teacher, this one you actually have to level up to get more power out of it, which you'll do over the course of grinding. The final ability that you can get from this guy is called Flash Step, and it costs a total of 100,000 belly, and you can use the R key to use this ability. Flash Step is a pretty basic ability. It just lets you teleport in a set range. It does have a decent cooldown. But the cool thing about this is that if you change your race to human, then the max range for the Flash Step actually doubles, so you can teleport a lot further. Anyways, moving on to another 2 items that you missed from this very island. I got the triple katana and the pipe. You can buy both of these from the same NPC. Let's start off with the triple katana. And you already know this is going to be better than the katana and the dual katana, because this is literally 3 katanas. You can can buy this for a total of 60,000 belly from the NPC that's located right here. The very first ability of this sword is called Air Slashes Barrage, where you just send out a butt ton of air slashes and they deal a decent amount of damage. But they do have a 20 mastery requirement, so you can't really unlock this ability as soon as you buy the sword. The next ability we got is the X ability, and this one is called Violent Rush. We just dash into your enemy and just slash them a butt ton of times. Overall, one of the best swords that you can get in the first seed, but there are a lot better. The next sword that you can buy from this guy is called Pipe, and it isn't really sword, it's literally just a pipe, but it does cost a total of 100,000 belly, so you already know it's going to be a good weapon. The first ability is called Pipe Ignition, where you dash into your enemy and slam them far away, dealing a decent amount of knockback, and this is similar to one of the Bomb Fruits moves. Then we got the X ability, which is called Dragon Blast, where you shoot out a fire projectile that deals a decent amount of damage. Overall, a pretty good sword. Anyways, moving on to the next item, this one is called the Refined Slingshot, just a better version of the slingshot. And the same NPC that you buy this from also sells you the Refined Flintlock as well as the cannon. And these are all guns, so they don't really have that crazy of abilities, but you definitely missed this NPC because he's kind of hidden behind this wall at Marine Fortress. So if you want to buy these guns, you know where to find them now. Moving on to the next item that you missed, I guarantee you at least 90% of you guys missed this in the first seed. And the reason for that is the NPC that sells you the black cape is extremely well hidden. But let me tell you about the black cape before I tell you where to find the NPC. This cape gives you a total of plus 100 energy, plus 100 health, as well as plus 5% damage, all for the cheap price of 50,000 belly, which seems like a lot, but when you look at the buffs, it's honestly a really good accessory. For the first seed, that is. You can find a lot better in the third seed. But anyways, let me tell you where to find this NPC. You have to head over to this specific tower in Marine Fortress, and then you have to go inside it and climb down this ladder, and boom, there you can find this NPC. It's literally a place no one would think to look. Moving on to the next item, we got a 2-for-1 here. We got the dual-headed blade as well as the Bacento, because you buy them both from the same guy. And I would be surprised if most of you missed this guy. He's kind of in the open, but I would understand, because half the time when you're playing the game, you're not really looking for NPCs. You're just trying to get your quest done. But let's talk a bit about the dual-headed blade. This is a rare sword that costs a total of 400,000 belly to buy. The first ability is called Assassinate, where you just dash into your enemy, dealing a butt ton of damage to them. Then we got the X ability with the 100 mastery requirement. In this one, you shoot 3 projectiles towards your enemy, and if they're close to you, you can hit your enemy with all 3 of them. Next up, we got the Bacento, which is actually the sword that Greybeard uses, so it is a pretty good sword, and also costs a total of 1 million belly. The first ability of this sword is called Windbreaker. We just shoot out a huge white projectile that deals a decent amount of damage, but it does have a 50 mastery requirement. Then we got that next ability called Quake Spear with a 150 mastery requirement, where you slam your sword straight into the floor, dealing damage to everything in a small range around you. Overall, really decent swords, and I definitely recommend getting your hands on them if you have the money. The next item, I guarantee that you guys did not find by yourself, because it's in a pretty hidden place, and that is the electric fighting style. The NPC that sells it is not even really on an island. He's just hidden behind these rocks right here. And if you talk to him, he sells you the fighting style for a total of 500,000 belly. And this is a top tier fighting style, not because it's actually really crazy, but because you can upgrade it to a fighting style called Electric Claw later in the third seed. But let me talk about this fighting style's ability. The first ability is called Stomp, where you jump straight into the sky and slam yourself straight back into the floor. Then we got the X ability, which is called Electric Tackle, where you dash straight forward, dealing damage to anything in your path. Then we got the C ability, which is called Electric Flow, where you create a small area of electricity, and if anyone's standing in it, they're frozen and can't use any abilities, and they also take a slow amount of damage over time. Moving on, we got this item called the Tomura Ring, and you can buy from an NPC called Yoshi, and this guy is kind of well hidden, but not for the reason you might think. He's on top of this building in Skylands, but some people don't have sky jump when they get to Skylands, so then they can't really access this NPC, and no one even thinks to look on top of the building. But let's talk about the accessory itself. This accessory increases your Blox fruit damage by a total of 10%, so I only recommend buying this if you are a fruit mate, because it does have the hefty price of 500,000 belly, and one of the requirements is having 200 stat points on your melee, which shouldn't be too difficult if you're in Skyland. This next item, I guarantee that you missed, because this is literally hidden inside a wall. This item is called the Soul Cane, and the NPC you buy from is called the Living Skeleton, which is literally hidden behind this wall in the Magma Village. No one would think to look here. It's in such a weird place, and it's behind a wall. You can buy this sword for a total of 750,000 belly, and the very first ability is called Soul Beam. We shoot out a small projectile which freezes your enemy for 1.5 seconds. Then we got the X ability with a 120 mastery requirement called Soul Slash, where you shoot out a butt ton of slash which deal a decent amount of damage to your enemy. Moving on to the next item, just like the Soul Cane from before, this one is also hidden directly behind a wall, but it's in a place that's hidden from the world, and that is the underwater city. First, you have to find the portal to the underwater city, which is located next to the snow island, and once you finally get there, you can talk to this NPC who's located behind this specific wall right here. And he's gonna sell you the fighting style for 750,000 belly, and honestly, Water Kung Fu is one of the best fighting styles in the whole game, and it's definitely the best fighting style in the first seed. The reason for that is because it has no delay between its M1 attacks, which makes it really good for grinding, and you can also upgrade it to Sharkman Karate later, which is the best fighting style in the whole game for grinding. The next item that you missed is Instinct. Instinct is one of the most useful items that you can get from the first, and you should definitely get your hands on this. The NPC that you get it from is located all the way at Upper Sky at the top of the temple, and no one ever thinks to go to the top of the temple. You don't really have any reason to go there. You can buy Instinct for a total of 750,000 belly, but you do have to do some things before that. You do have to finish the Saber Expert quest, and you do have to be above level 300, which isn't that difficult. If you're high level in the third seed, you should be able to kill the Saber Expert with ease, because you can just kind of glitch him behind a wall when you fight him. That's pretty much it for the items. Did you know this item is super good for grinding, and this one is just extremely overpowered? These are 26 secret items in the second seed that you missed. And starting off, we got a boat called the Lantern Boat, and this is a luxury boat. And a lot of you definitely don't have access to this because because it's actually pretty hidden. The way you get it is by first heading over to the Kingdom of Rose, then finding the factory, and then once you head behind the factory, you're gonna find an NPC called the Cyborg. And no, I'm not talking about the boss that you fight in the first sea. This guy's literally just an NPC. You can give him a total of 1,500 fragments and get this boat. After unlocking, you should be able to buy it from the luxury boat dealer for 5,000 belly whenever you want. But did you know that back in the day, it used to be called the flower ship? Just look how different they look. If you had the flower ship before the lantern update, then you have to go rebuy the lantern boat from the Cyborg NPC, which is just kind of a scam because you're basically paying double for the same boat. But anyways, let's move on to the next item. This is the Dragon's Breath fighting style. I'm pretty sure it's well known for all second sea players, but if you somehow missed this, then I definitely recommend that you get your hands on this. It was added to the game in update 8 from the Sabi NPC, who's located at this specific part of this bridge for a total of 1,500 fragments. Anyways, let's get into the abilities so you can see how decent it is. First up, we got the Dragon Rush ability with the 100 mastery requirement, where you dash straight into your enemy and just pummel them. Then we got the X ability, which is called Dragon Flames, with a 200 mastery requirement. For this one, you shoot out spiraling fire. Next up, we got the C ability, which is called Dragon Explosion, and this is similar to the Bomb Fruit self-destruct ability, where you just kind of charge yourself up and let out a huge explosion that deals a butt ton of damage. The good things about this fighting style is that it's relatively cheap, even though it does cost fragments, has good damage and range, and it can obviously hit multiple enemies at the same time, so that makes it pretty decent for grinding. And also, it literally lights your hands on fire. That's pretty cool. But a bad thing about this fighting style is that it deals pretty heavy knockback to your enemies, which means that you kind of have to go chase them after you deal damage to them. And did I mention you can also upgrade this fighting style to Dragon Talon later in the 3rd sea? So you definitely don't want to miss out on this fighting style because the Dragon Talon fighting style is one of the best in the whole game. Anyways, moving on, the next thing that you missed is not really an item. It's the Race V2. And hopefully most of you watching know what I'm talking about, but if you don't, I'm gonna tell you anyways.
Yeah, boy.
Basically, there's races in the game, and you can get a total of 6 of them. The first one is the human race, then we got the rabbit race, after that the shark race, the angel race, the cyborg race, and the ghoul race. And all of these races have different versions. It goes from V1, which is the base form of the race. You can upgrade it to V2, V3, and V4. To get your race to V2, it's incredibly simple, and it's the same quest for every single race, so everyone watching can follow along. First up, you have to head over to the green zone, and then you have to talk to this NPC called the Alchemist. You just have to collect a total of 3 different flowers. And in order to talk to the Alchemist, you do have to talk to Bartillo, who's located in the cafe, and finish his Colosseum quest. And you also have to be at least level 850. Once you do that, you just have to collect the flowers from the Alchemist quest, and boom, you're literally done. You can head straight back over to the Alchemist and purchase Race V2 for a total of 500,000 belly. But do keep in mind, you do have to pay this amount for each race, so I recommend choosing one race and just sticking to it. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is extremely similar to what I just mentioned. V3 for every single race. The NPC is extremely well hidden. The way you find this NPC is by first heading over to this huge tree where the diamond boss spawns, and then you have to walk to this specific wall right here, and boom, you should be able to walk through it. The NPC that's standing in the middle is the one that you want to talk to. If you are the human race, then your quest is to kill a total of 3 bosses. The diamond boss, the Jeremy boss, and the Vegeta boss, which should be pretty easy to do because you can just server hop these bosses. For the rabbit race, you have to collect a total of 30 chests. Once again, you can pretty easily server hop this, especially in the upper sky temple in the first sea. That has a butt ton of chests. Next up, we got the shark race, and for this one, you have to kill a naturally spawning sea beast. The ones that get summoned by the Tidekeeper do not count, so you do have to go on your boat, take a stroll into the water, and wait for a sea beast to spawn in. This is probably one of the hardest V3 quests so far. Next up, we got the quest for the Angel Race, and for this one, you have to kill another player with the Angel Race, which is pretty difficult to do, but if you have a friend with the Angel Race, then you can kind of just kill him. Next up, we got the Ghoul Race, and for this one, you have to kill a total of 5 players. And for this quest, you can actually kill the same person 5 times. So once again, this one's pretty easy. You can just get your friend and just kill them a butt ton of times. Finally, we got the V3 for the Cyborg Race, and for this one, you just have to give any physical fruit to this NPC. And this is probably the easiest quest by far because all you have to do is head over to the Blox Fruit Gacha, roll a fruit, and then just give it to him. Extremely simple. I would tell you guys how to get the V4 for the races, but that's actually not in the 2nd sea, it's in the 3rd sea. Anyways, let's move on to the next item that you guys missed. The superhuman fighting style, and it's one of the most difficult fighting styles in the whole game to obtain. First of all, you need to have a 300 mastery on Dark Step, Electric, Water Kung Fu, and Dragon's Breath. Then you have to go out of your way to find the martial arts teacher who's located at this specific place in the Snow Island. Once you do that, you can pay the NPC a total of 3 million belly, and you can finally unlock this fighting style. The very first ability of this fighting style is called the Beast Owl Pounce, where you just jump towards your enemy and just start beating the crap out of them. Then we got the X ability, which is called Thunderclap, where you just deal damage to everything around you. After that, we got the C ability with that 330 mastery requirement, where you just dash and just send them flying far away. But do keep in mind, you can upgrade this fighting style to God Human later, so if you're looking to get God Human, then you definitely want to get your hands on this fighting style. Moving on, the next item that I got here is the Bizarre Rifle. And the way you get this gun is actually actually pretty unique. You buy it with ectoplasm. And you guys might be wondering, how the heck do you get ectoplasm? Well, you get ectoplasm from killing NPCs in the cursed ship. Once you have 25 ectoplasm from defeating the NPCs, you just have to go talk to the El Rodolfo and just buy the gun. Next up, I got another item that you can buy with ectoplasm, and this one is extremely overpowered for grinding, the Ghoul Mask. It gives you a total of 500 energy, a 10% life leech on all melee attacks against other players, a 2.5% life leech on melee attacks against NPCs, and a 35% movement speed increase. And the overpowered thing about this is not the 500 energy or the 35 increased movement speed. It's the fact that you gain life leech, which is honestly super overpowered. And if you don't know what life leech means, it basically means that you heal back a certain percentage of damage that you do. And the person that you can get this from is an NPC called El Perro, who's also located on the cursed ship. And once you talk to him, you just have to give him 50 ectoplasm and he'll sell the accessory to you. Moving on, we got another item that you can buy at the cursed ship, and this is the Midnight Blade. And you can buy from an NPC called El Admin for a total of 100 ectoplasm. The very first ability of the sword is called Portal Opening, and this is extremely similar to the Portal Fruit's X ability. It's just honestly really cool and it has amazing VFX. Then we got the X ability, which is called Crescent Dash, where you dash straight into your enemy and just send them flying away. Overall, this sword is good because it has high damage. It's good for close range fights, especially if you're using the Buddha Fruit. But the bad thing is that it has a small hitbox and pretty short range, so I don't really recommend using this for long range fights. Next up, I got a 2-for-1 item, and these aren't really items, they're just races. And I know I talked a bit about races before, but I didn't actually tell you guys how you obtain the Cyborg and the Ghoul race. The very first race I'm going to tell you how to get is the Ghoul race. First, you have to get a total of 100 ectoplasm, as well as a Hellfire Torch, by defeating the Cursed Captain, who's a raid boss that spawns on the cursed ship. Then you have to go talk to an NPC called the Experiment, and he's just going to change your race to Ghoul. And do keep in mind, if you actually end up switching to a different race, you can switch back to Ghoul at any time by talking to this NPC. It doesn't mean you lose the race forever. Moving on to Cyborg, the way you get this race is by completing the Cyborg puzzle. First, you have to get an item called the Fist of Darkness, and you can get this by defeating a Sea Beast, but it only has a 2.5% drop chance. After you do that, you have to start the Order Boss raid to get an item called the Core Brain. Once you do that, you have to try starting another Order raid with the Core Brain item in your inventory. Once you do that, a secret staircase will open it, then you can just directly purchase the Cyborg race for a total of 2,500 fragments. Anyways, moving on from the race, the next one that we got here is Death Step, and it's the upgraded version of Dark Step. To get it, you need a 400 mastery on Dark Step, as well as the Library Key, which you can get by defeating the Awakened Ice Admiral at the Ice Castle on the second sea. You simply need to walk into this room, talk to Fio, the reformed NPC, and pay her a total of 2.5 million belly, as well as 5,000 fragments, and then boom, you can get the fighting style. The very first ability of this fighting style is called Rocket Kick, where you just send yourself flying and slam straight into the floor. Then we got the X ability, which is called Wind Bullet, where you just shoot out a small projectile. Then we got the C ability, which is called Vermilion Drill, where you just keep kicking the crap out of your enemy until you destroy them. Then we got the V ability, which is a transformation where you set your feet on fire, which makes it so you do a lot more damage. Speaking about fighting styles, I got another fighting style here, and definitely the best for grinding in the whole game, Sharkman Karate. I'm pretty sure at least some of you watching have missed this. You first have to go talk to the Dyrock, the Sharkman NPC, who's located at the Forgotten Island. Then you have to defeat the Tidekeeper NPC, who's the boss of this island, and then you should have a chance of getting the Water Key. Make sure you have your Water Kung Fu at least a 400 mastery. Once you do that, you can buy Sharkman Karate for a total of 2.5 million belly and 5,000 fragments. And you can just equip it from the NPC whenever you want. And I'm not even going to talk about the abilities of this fighting style because they're just kind of useless. This fighting style is overpowered purely because of its M1 attacks. Moving on, I got the very first item on this list that I'm guaranteed at least 80% of you guys missed. The Kabucha, and it's a legendary gun. And the reason you definitely missed this is because it's located in a random island, which you had no reason to go to. And there's a good chance you finished the second sea without even noticing this island existed. It's located a bit away from spawn, and once you get over to the island, you're going to talk to an NPC called the Strongest God, and he's just going to sell you the gun for a total of 1,500 fragments. The first ability of this gun is called Flying Firebird, and it does exactly what it sounds like. You just shoot out a bird on fire. Then we got the X ability, which is called Intense Wind, where you just shoot out super long wind bullet, and good luck hitting someone with this because it's extremely slow. And the best thing about this gun is that both its abilities break instinct, so it's definitely something that's good for PvP even if you're not a gun main. Moving on, we got the most overpowered item on this list, and definitely something that you don't want to miss when you head into the third sea, the True Triple Katana. This is an item that requires a lot of grinding to get. You need the Sari sword, the Shisui sword, as well as the Wando sword, which means you need 6 million in total to buy all of them. 300 mastery on each of the swords, and after you're finally done with that, you can head all the way to the top of the green zone where you can find the Mysterious Man NPC who's going to sell you the True Triple Katana for 2 million belly, which means in total you need 8 million belly and 900 total levels of mastery. The first ability of this sword is called Wolf Fang Rush, where you dash into your enemy, spin around, slice them, and just send them flying. Next up, we got the X ability, which is called Dragon Hurricane with a 350 mastery, where you just shoot out a big hurricane towards your enemy that deals a butt ton of damage to them. This sword is super good because it has extremely high damage, definitely the best sword that you can get from the second sea. All the moves from the sword can damage a sea beast, and its M1 speed is above average. But the bad thing is that it only breaks instinct on direct hit. But that's pretty much it for the items. Less than 1% of players have this fighting style, and this accessory is the best in the whole game. These are 21 secret items that you missed in the third sea. And starting off, the very first item on this list is the Dark Dagger. And I bet at least 90% of you guys watching it have never even laid your hands on this item because it's extremely rare. The NPC that you get it from is the Rip Indra raid boss, not the Rip Indra NPC, because that would be way too easy. The Rip Indra raid boss is probably one of the strongest bosses in the whole game. He's literally a level 5000 boss, and he has two different forms. In his first form, you have to do 425,000 damage to him, and then in his second form, he heals back all the way to max HP. So total, you have to do more than 750,000 damage to him. And he also uses the Dark Blade and the Dark Blade Slayer skin as his weapons, and he also has a bunch of admin abilities. But he does drop you a bunch of cool stuff, and one of those items is the Dark Dagger. And that's the reason this item is incredibly rare, because you only have a 5% drop chance after killing this boss. And with all the tedious stuff you have to do to spawn in this boss and the amount of pure strength it takes to kill him, you already know this item is probably one of the rarest in the whole game. And the reason it's called the Dark Dagger is because it's actually kind of similar to the Dark Blade. The effects of the weapon are kind of similar. I mean, just take a look at this. It's a tiny weapon, but it still deals a decent amount of damage. The first ability is called Proficient Impale, where you dash straight into your enemy and send them flying, and this attack actually does break instinct. The next ability is called Slamming Slash, where you dash into your enemy and start slicing the crap out of them, and then you send them flying. This sword, or dagger I guess, has amazing combo potential and very low click cooldown. Literally 0.2 seconds. That's incredibly less. But it is kind of hard to use because you do need good aim. Anyways, moving on from the Dark Dagger, the next item that I got here is Electric Claw. And most of you watching should know what Electric Claw is, but you probably don't know how to get this fighting style. First of all, you should know that the Electric Claw fighting style is the upgraded version of the electric fighting style, so you do need to have that fighting style to unlock this one. The very first thing you need to do is obviously get the electric fighting style and then get a 400 mastery on it. Once you've done that, you have to head over to the floating turtle island, and then you have to talk to this NPC called the previous hero. And if your electric fighting style is at a 400 mastery, then he's going to give you a quest to get to the mansion in under 30 seconds. But you can kind of cheese this quest by just setting your spawn point at the mansion and just teleporting there once the quest starts. After completing the quest, you simply have to head back to the previous hero NPC and then pay him a total of 3 million belly as well as 5,000 fragments. You're gonna unlock the Electric Claw fighting style, and you can equip it from him at any time you want. Anyways, let's get into the abilities of this fighting style. The very first ability of this fighting style is called Electrical Rampage, where you dash into enemy and start scratching the crap out of them, and you deal a good amount of damage to them. Then we got the X ability, which is called Lightning Thrust, with a 220 mastery requirement. For this one, you dash straight into your enemy and just explode with electricity, dealing a butt ton of damage to them. Then we got the C ability, which is called Thunderclap and Flash, where you dash all around your enemy and slam them, sending them flying. This fighting style does one of the highest damage out of every single fighting style in the game. The good things about it is that the quest to get it is extremely easy. It has really high damage, pretty high mobility, and all of its moves have good end lag. The bad thing is obviously the requirements to get it. You need 3 million belly, 5,000 fragments, and a 400 mastery on the electric style. Let me just tell you, that is no easy task. Anyways, moving on to the next item, I got a sword. This one is called the Fox Lamp. This sword was actually added in update 22 when the Kitsune fruit was added. But anyways, this is a legendary sword, and the way you get it is at the Kitsune Island, which isn't actually a normal island in the game, and you do have to do some special things to get there. So once you get to the island, you basically have a chance of being rewarded by the Kitsune Shrine, but you do have to offer up to 15 Azure Embers, which is also a pretty difficult item to obtain. And you also have to do this during the blue moon, so that just makes it incredibly more difficult. The very first ability of the sword is called Scorching Azure, where you basically just shoot a bunch of blue flamey balls that just start hitting the crap out of your enemy and deals a butt ton of damage to them. Then we got the X ability, which is called Infernal Firestorm, where you dash into your enemy and just pummel them with a bunch of Kitsune fire. And the effects for the sword just look extremely cool. Good things about this sword is that it has extremely high damage, and both of its moves have really low end lag, but it does have really high mastery requirements, and it's pretty difficult to obtain. Moving on, the next item that you missed is the Pale Scarf. And you might have seen this accessory in the game because it is pretty popular, but it is no easy task to get. Before I tell you how to get this accessory, let me tell you the buffs it gives you. First, it increases your Blox Food and sword damage by 15%, which doesn't seem like much, but when you're fighting someone, it's going to come in handy a butt ton. Then it gives you 2 instinct dodges, and it increases your instinct vision range by 10 times. That literally just lets you see the whole island that you're standing on with your instinct, which is incredibly overpowered. But since it's overpowered, you already know it's going to be incredibly difficult to get. To get the Pale Scarf, the first thing you have to do is defeat the Cake Prince boss, which is way easier said than done. To spawn him in, you have to destroy 500 enemies at Cake Land in the Sea of Treats, and then you have to talk to the Drip Mama NPC. Once you do that, he's going to open the portal to where the Cake Prince spawns. Keep in mind, you can also get the scarf after defeating the Dough King, but I recommend doing the Cake Prince because because it's just a lot easier. But if you're looking to awaken your rubber food and get this at the same time, then you can obviously go with the Dough King. But keep in mind, you do have to get a lot of people to help you, and make sure you deal at least 10% damage to the boss, or else you won't get any of the drops. Moving on, the next item that I got here is a gun, and I know most guns in the game are pretty bad, but this one is incredibly good. This is a mythical gun, and it's called the Soul Guitar. And the way you get it is by talking to an NPC or a machine, I guess. It's called the Word Machine, and you basically have to finish a puzzle called the Soul Guitar puzzle, which involves the full moon, so it is pretty difficult to get the timing right for this one. Once you finish the puzzle, you do have to get 500 bones, 250 ectoplasm, 1 dark fragment, and 5,000 fragments. Once you do that, you can go talk to the Weird Machine again, and then you should be able to craft the Soul Guitar. The reason the Soul Guitar is actually good is because you don't need to be a gun main to make this useful, because since both of its abilities break instinct, you can kind of just use this ability to start a combo on your opponent. Anyways, let's get into the abilities themselves. The very first one is called Soul Shaker, where you just charge up a huge beam of energy and just send it flying towards your enemy. Then we got the X ability, which is called El Diablo, where you basically summon a huge beam of energy into the sky, and it starts dealing damage to everything surrounding it. It's an incredibly overpowered ability. Overall, this gun does have high damage, that is if you are a gun main, and the most overpowered thing about this gun is that its M1 can actually break instinct. That means you can just basically spam break instinct on players. That's the reason this is considered the best gun in the game for PvP. Anyways, moving on, the next item that I got here is a sword, and this is the Pole V2, which is a legendary sword. This sword is the upgraded version of the Pole Sword, which you can get by defeating the Thunder God NPC. But you might be wondering, how do I get the Pole Sword to Pole V2? Well, the first thing you have to do is to get the Pole First Form to 180 mastery, which doesn't seem like a lot, but just wait till you see what you have to do next. You have to completely awaken your Rumble Fruit with a 250 mastery. That is just crazy. And then you finally have to complete a Rumble Raid with the Rumble Fruit equipped. Once you do that, you're going to be teleported to a place where you can interact with a Thunder God NPC, and then he's just going to let you purchase the Pole V2 for 5,000 fragments. And keep in mind, you're not going to lose your Pole V1 sword, you're just going to get 2 different swords. The very first ability of this sword is called Hand of God, where you shoot lightning out of your sword and deal a butt ton of damage to whatever you hit. Then we got the X ability, which is called Electrical Prism, where you just send out a butt ton of lightning that just shocks the crap out of your enemies. Good thing about this sword is that it has pretty high stuns and good damage, and both of its moves actually damage sea beasts. But it is incredibly difficult to get because there's a mastery requirement for a fruit and the sword, which is incredibly weird. The next thing that I got here is a fighting style, and this is Dragon Talon, which is the upgraded version of Dragon's Breath. To get this, you first have to get the Fire Essence by rolling random surprises at the Death King, who's located at the Haunted Castle. Then you have to go talk to the Uzoth NPC and then give him the essence. Once you do that, you have to meet these requirements. You have to have at least a 400 mastery on Dragon's Breath, and then pay Uzoth 3 million belly as well as 5,000 fragments. Anyways, let's get into the abilities of this fighting style. The very first ability is called Dragon Lighter, where you dash straight into your enemy and just charge up a huge flame that literally turns blue, and then you just send them flying. Then we got the X ability, which is called Ember Annihilation, where you just shoot out a flaming projectile that deals a decent amount of damage. Then we got the C ability, which is called Infernal Vortex, where you basically just charge up a fire tornado and you kind of just explode inwards. It's a pretty weird ability. Overall, the good things about this fighting style is that it has big hitboxes, high damage, and it's pretty easy to aim, but it is incredibly hard to obtain, and most of its moves are close range. Moving on, the next item that you missed is a sword, and this is the Spiky Trident. And the way you get this is actually same as the Pale Scarf from before. You just have to defeat the Cake Prince, and you have a 10% chance of getting it dropped to you. Moving on, we got yet another accessory, and this one is called the Leviathan Shield. This is a mythical accessory, so you already know it's good, and the way you get it is by crafting it at the Beast Hunter. You have to pay 1 mirror fractal, 30 Leviathan scales, 10 electric wings, and 20 fool's gold, and it gives you a 15% defense against melee sword and gun attacks, as well as a 30% defense against sea events, which is incredibly good, and a 90% defense against water damage, which basically means that you can swim for at least a short period of time without taking much damage, and it also increases your health by 1,000, which is just incredibly overpowered, and I think this is the best defense accessory in the whole game. Moving on, I got a sword, which is definitely a top 3 in the whole game. This is the Cursed Dual Katana, also known as the CDK, and the place you get it is at the Floating Turtle by defeating the Cursed Skeleton boss, but you do have to finish the puzzle before it. And to even start the puzzle, you need to have a 350 mastery on the Yama and Tushida swords, and also you do have to be at least level 2200. Once you do that, you can unlock this sword. The very first ability of this sword is called Revolting Ravager, where you just charge up a huge long range attack and just send it flying to wherever your cursor aims. Then we got the X ability, which is called Slayer Goliath, which is the exact same thing, but this time the attack is just light speed. It's almost impossible to dodge. This sword has incredibly good combo potential and probably the highest damage out of every sword in the game, but obviously the downside is that it's incredibly difficult to obtain because you need 2 other swords and you need to have a 350 mastery on both of them. Moving on, the next item that I got here is a fighting style, and this is not just any fighting style, it's the most overpowered fighting style in the whole game. This is God Human, and the way you get it is by having a 400 mastery on Superhuman, Death Step, Electric Claw, Sharkman Karate, and Dragon Talon. And keep in mind, to get each of those fighting styles, you need to have a 300 mastery on all of the fighting styles before them, which is just incredibly tedious. Once you get that, you can go talk to the Ancient Monk NPC, who's going to sell you the fighting style for 5 million belly, 5,000 fragments, and 10 dragon scales, 20 fish tails, 10 mystic droplets, and 20 magma ore. Then you finally get your hands on this overpowered fighting style. The very first ability of this fighting style is called Soaring Beast, where you dash into your enemy and just pummel the crap out of them. Then we got the X ability, which is called Heaven and Earth, where you just shoot out a really overpowered projectile. Then we got the C ability, which is called Sixth Realm Gun, where you dash into your enemy and just send them flying. And if you do hold the key down, then you're actually gonna punch the crap out of them before you send them flying, making it deal a butt ton of damage. The good things about this fighting style is that it's the most overpowered fighting style in the whole game, but the downsides is that it's just really tedious to get. Moving on to the next thing in the third C that you missed, this is Race V4. And the requirements for this is obviously having the race that you want to get to V4 at least V3. Then you have to defeat the Rip Indra boss, complete the Sealed King quest, get one Mirror Fractal, which you get from defeating the Do King. Then you have to get the Blue Gear on Mirage Island, and you need 2 other players with different races at least their V3 form. Then you have to finish the training task from the Ancient One, and this is just really tedious. And then finally you unlock the V4 of your race. And the V4 for each race is different, and Race V4 is just a really overpowered thing to have. It's incredibly good for PvP and just your general enjoyment in the game. Moving on, the next thing that I got here is a sword, and this is the Halo Scythe. This is a mythical sword, and you get it by defeating a boss called the Soul Reaper. And you can spawn in the Soul Reaper after getting Halo Essence from the Death King. Once you defeat this boss, you have a 5% chance of getting this sword dropped to you. The very first ability of this sword is called Death Cyclone, where you just send out a spiraling fire tornado towards your enemy, and it deals a decent amount of damage to them. Then we got the X ability, which is called Soul Execution, and it does exactly what it sounds like. You charge into your enemy and you just execute them with your sword. I mean, you don't literally kill them because that would just be way too overpowered, but it does deal a butt ton of damage to them. And a pretty cool thing about this sword is that it actually deals more damage if your enemy is below 50% health. So you can kind of take advantage of enemies that have low HP when you're using this sword. Moving on, the next item that I got here is a fighting style that's debatably on the same level as Godhuman. This is a Sanguine Art fighting style, and you can only get this in the 3rd C. You can get this from an NPC called Shafi, but before that you need to give Shafi a Leviathan heart, which you get by defeating the Leviathan boss, which you get after defeating the Leviathan and using the harpoon from the Beast Hunter ship to carry it all the way back to Tiki Outpost. Then you have to get it into your inventory. And keep in mind, you will lose the heart when you buy this fighting style, so just make sure you keep that in mind before you buy it. Once you give this heart to the NPC, it's going to tell you to get a total of 20 Demonic Wisps, 20 Vampire Fangs, and 2 Dark Fragments. And once you give those items to the NPC, you're finally going to be able to get this fighting style after paying 5 million belly and 5,000 fragments. The very first ability of this fighting style is called Bloodbane Drain, where you charge into your enemy and just start beating that crap out of them, and then you send them flying, dealing a butt ton of damage to them. Then we got the X ability, which is called Scarlet Tear, where you just shoot out a small sword-like projectile towards your enemy that deals a lot of damage. Then we got the C ability, which is called Devourer of Worlds, where you shoot out an orb into the sky that just aimbots onto your enemy and deals a lot of damage to them. That's pretty much it.